Hello to you from Tacoma, Washington. My name is Mac Crary. My full name is James McRyland Crary. My father was Ryland Wesley Crary. He was from Dallas City, Iowa. I go by Mac, which was my grandfather's name. If you live in Mississippi, you may have seen a Mac Crary Road, or if you live in North Dakota, you may recognize the name. We were pilgrims. It's an old name in America. On my mother's side, Ward and Marie were distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. They were married for 66 years, and they came from a family of pioneers. The old dirt road where they courted was still a dirt road when I visited them in the summer of 1979. They made it through the Dust Bowl by printing a newsletter, an old iron printer that had to be loaded manually, letter by letter. Each letter was a 3 foot rod. He ended up at the St. Louis Post Dispatch after working in Wichita and for the Miami Herald. So, my father was an educator, a Peace Corps leader. He knew Eisenhower. He was a naval lieutenant in World War II on the U.S. San Jacinto in the radio room. The fact that his voice could be heard by both sides in the Pacific turned out to be very important to the story that engulfs me. And I'd like to have my testimony where someone, should they be interested, can assess and truly try to understand some of the things that happened. Now, I'm a deaf man. I can't hear my own voice. When I played the piano, which I did for 40 years, I can't hear it. I've always been almost completely deaf. So I never really had a life. I never had a wife and children. There were other reasons in respect to the way that I was attacked that made that impossible. But I worked in a library. I eventually graduated from college after a deaf girl taught me sign language. Made honors, of course. It was, you know, a studious person going back to school later in life, so it would have been surprising if I hadn't. Did my homework, did research papers, learned about science, botany, climate change, advanced algebra and so on. But I've always delved into things. My father was a very resourceful person. He abandoned my branch of the family, but kept in touch and helped get me so that I could deal with being deaf at one point by spending a year with me. He was chair of the philosophy of education at the University of Pittsburgh and professor emeritus at Bethany College. I was born in Pittsburgh in 1960. I recently turned 60. At the time of the 1960 World Series, that was the time of my birth. So, I remember Roberto and Maz and Matty Alou and Al Oliver and, when Willie Stargell was a rookie, Manny Sangan, Danny Murtaugh, Bob Prince. I eventually moved out here to Tacoma and followed the Mariners for a while, but there's very few people who are actually authentically in a position to comment about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. There's still some intellectual activity when it comes to JFK, but not enough. I corresponded with one of Eleanor Roosevelt's friends late in her life. Martha Gellhorn wrote to me from a Belize on a manual typewriter when she was in her 80s. And my grandfather had a photograph he took of Eleanor Roosevelt in a pavilion dining. My father knew Eisenhower at Teachers College. They would meet occasionally. He also flew off to see the Beatles before their rise from power. That's not what he was doing in London, but he was invited. You got to see this. So, he was a man of the world in that respect, and he talked to me about World War II, the causes, the outcome, and so on. By the time I was 3, I realized that Adolf Hitler had gotten away and wouldn't be talked down about that. But he laughed it off. I don't think at the time anybody gave much thought to it, but Kennedy was killed, and I didn't put those two things together for years. I loved Kennedy, still do. Haven't really appreciated his replacements. The Tonkin Gulf incident was just appalling. They allowed 2 rednecks to put a bullet in the hull of their own ship and start a war that divided the country and will never be the same. It's terrible. And of course, I fell out of sync with the pirates when Clemente was done, and they don't talk about that. But I was disappointed that people would vote for Donald Trump. Frankly, half the people love, half the people hate. We have to find our place between these two halves so well matched. Yehuda Amichai said. So we know the Kennedy half. Don't know if they won. As of today, they're still counting the votes. So that's somewhat of an introduction to myself. My friends in the world have been, you know, poor people like myself. I never lived above the poverty line. Deaf Jeannie is a wonderful girl. They say she has Down syndrome. She doesn't have the obvious English language skills of an 8-year-old, but she's frenetic as can be, and she has beautiful sign language. I thanked her and thanked her when I graduated from college. She's just a wonderful human being. For my poetry, I went to the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts and met some charismatic people and some people who turned out to be, for no reason that I could give you, determined enemies of me, targeting me and so forth. But I studied with Peter Balakian, who won the Pulitzer for the Ozone Journal about the time I won the Honors Department contest for one of my poems about Pittsburgh. I didn't take his picture. And we kept in touch enough that we sent our congratulations to one another over it. Poetry is an important art. And it's a poor man's art. You don't need to buy painting materials. I knew some painters at the governor's school, picked up some painting skills from a few of them. Ray Geiger was a constant presence and devastated when my dear friend passed away, but it's also a mysterious part of the Pennsylvania culture. Casing me, probably. So I knew people in high school who I would rather have not, but public schools for the deaf are a place where you just have to take what comes your way. There's not much you can do about that. I would have made to be taken prisoner to associates and puppets of Michael Todd from Sony and Peter Sinfield from King Crimson. Which brings me to a particularly lackluster part of the story, all of the stuff that got mixed up when Robert Fripp became obsessed with me and Penis Gabriel started crowing about me on his records. At the time when I was attacked as a child, it was like being shot. I was attacked from behind. It was just flattened me, you know. I didn't see it coming. I didn't know the person who did it. It was an assassination, basically. After Bobby Kennedy had been done, and we saw this violence in the air. I thought it was just somebody hated me. I didn't see myself as a target at the time, but now, at the time, the Wattenmaker family and their little gang in Highland Park. Bernard Wattenmaker was from a psychiatrist from Attica State Prison who was working on me as a hostage mom. They ended up implanting a nerve agent, which is how I went deaf and had a semi-coma. It took me and tortured me and used me for Warhol pedo object films when I was a very small child. They did hideous things to me that Michael Reagan never stopped salivating over for some reason. He's some sort of bizarre and deranged, inflamed pervert. He must know these things, must know. And keeps demanding extrusion methods, interrogation methods to get to his favorite scenes. I mean, it's just obnoxious as politics can possibly ever get. And with Brian Eno as his quisling associate with the whirling needles of interrogation, you know. At the time that Wattenmaker was doing this, playing King Crimson for me and saying his gang required that everybody listen to King Crimson, I didn't realize that he was an operator for King Crimson proper. That took me a while to get through my head. So, now Murder Monkey, who is the topic of this, Ringo Starr, of course. Robert Fripp is a clean-cut parochial wiggler who is the witch doctor to this terrible Attila from the Beatles, who's behind, generations brain damage. And, just snafu'd our civil norms after Martin Luther King was killed and planted a script on me that they claim could have saved John Lennon, man. It had nothing to do with me, and I doubt John Lennon even died, but his claim that John Lennon, the media, the fake news, the Trump media, that John Lennon wasn't Houdini, wasn't Pentagon Disney, that Reagan got shot too, all of this stuff allows them to say that the people who did it are cool guys who helped them get control of the copyright of the story, and I, who knew nothing about it, am just the dog, right? So this is the story that Murder Monkey sells. They recently killed 3 more Kennedys. Okay, Murder Monkey gets away with murder by cartooning me. It's part of what I call the cartoon industrial complex. I mean, they just create a cartoon of somebody that they worked over in absolutely ravenous mayhem for years. And then make a joke of it and say, oh, could have saved John Lennon. What's that have to do with anything? They were running an extermination project. They ran 2, not 1, but 2, and I'm arguably a third now. Holocaust simulation experiments, they say. They were demonstration models. They gassed me in a place called King's Estate and then inundated me with these letters that were incomprehensible while I was in a coma from an Israeli kibbutz signed Gail Burston and look-alike of whom appears on one of Flip's solo records. Okay. Now, this little Nicola gets away with this and their machine lures me to Mount Desert Island for an AIDS Holocaust experiment. When that started, that Penis Gabriel called an experience park. He's railed to Donald Trump. He's the dude who, gets it done. He managed to get me castrated and this beautiful girl who's deaf with Down syndrome raped. acting out the insane idea that a girl who broke my heart, who was still a virgin, was psychologically raped because I knocked on Robert Fripp's door at a time when he was running a human contact tour. I didn't do anything but come and listen to him play. And then I walked away. And he's like, oh, Crary is obsessed with this girl. He's obsessed with me. We must do something about him. And his legacy was to produce all of these porno films on behalf of Warhol in an AIDS experiment that was clocked to the AIDS attack. And it turned out to be Two Virgins Pussy Bowl, a war game, and I end up in Tacoma where they have these kinds of fight clubs. And it's over UW dialectical race relations. You see, they had it all figured out on the Stratego board how they could arrange it so that the black man calls dibs on Midori Goto, who was the star of the AIDS attack script, and get revenge for Yoko Ono on my father, who was the voice of the San Jacinto in the word sea. Okay, that's how it operates. And the really abnormal quislings from the British parochial school of thought, came in and inundated everybody with sexual energy and reckless abandon, and then said hi, and stung them with the AIDS attack. And they get to claim, because of Murder Monkey, that it's all in the name of John Lennon, and they incite the queers who haven't had enough. They want more. They want more satisfy. And the queers in the Chop District are killing people. Innocent bystanders. Not allowing word to get out of warning because they own the sacred penny of Yoko Ono, for Yoko Ono and Warhol, the storyline. And they just draft people. They pluck Circe Kennedy. Goodbye, Circe Kennedy. They do this kind of stuff. And they call it, this abnormal mentality, the Green Party. Okay. In other words, it's not about race anymore. They pretend it is, but it's not. It's an arc. And I've found evidence that the arc concept was in cement here, where they say free Nelson Mandela and Noah in the cement. So this goes back before AIDS, right? So they're talking about Noah, and the South African Secret Service had this all set up at the University of Pittsburgh. So we're dealing with people who are laughing at the United States from the Eurocentric community of places like Germany and the Axis, who want revenge for World War II, and they're getting it. I mean, they're taking it out on us now. I mean, and people were voting for the abnormal politician who's behind this stuff. So it's obviously deranged and very scary. Now, I went to a few schools. I went to Temple University. I went to the Community College of Allegheny County. I went to Tacoma Community College. And of course, I was homeless for a long time, so I got mixed up in these kinds of fictive families with their bullies and some sensible, needy people, and worked on newsletters and so forth. Real Change newspaper has published some of my poetry, even in Chinook Coupon book. So, I get ripped off. They come and steal anything they want from me. They took my bike a few days ago. Nobody respects me for some reason. They just work me over non-waste from Sunday and then brag about it. Penis Gabriel bragged in public, by putting me on that voice again. Made no secret of it. Of course, sound mental health. They were full of queer murderers and French elements. They said, they called up Nancy Moore, the mother in the case. Oh, he has delusions of reference, classical paranoid schizophrenic. Thinks Penis Gabriel is following. And she said, well, you say what you want about Jim. I don't know why she feels that way, but say what you want about Jim. Peter Gabriel wrote to him for 3 years, like once a week, and I read all of the letters. I mean, all of that really happened. So they couldn't really pull off what they tried to do at first, but they found other sneaky ways to do it. They murdered a girl and got me mad so that I swore at them, and they poisoned me in the mouth and made me spend Christmas in the Keukennormal and stuff. I mean, these are insane rivals who made off with my wife and are trying to justify it by making it look at how professional they are, tampering with a neuroplasm that Wattmaker implanted. And they have Wattmaker agents here now, you know, still killing people in the Chop district, same for the Green Party. So we're dealing with the criminally insane here. That's obviously the situation, have been for a very, very long time. So, you know, I've done various things to try to get help. I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to St. Louis to see my grandparents and Robert Fripp when he was on his human contact tour, which apparently fed his perilous parochial ego. Oh, he has a moth, he's a puppet of mine. Is what he was thinking for some reason, rather than a legitimate person who's been dislocated by people misusing his art, which is what I thought at the time. I wrote for the Pitt News. I even wrote for the Post Gazette, God help me. I worked at the Bar Harbor Times. I worked for James W. Child and Bowling Green, political philosopher and fellow of the University of Pittsburgh. Got suckered into working for Hypatia Feminist Journal in Illinois for a while. And I've seen California, Oregon, I've seen the Dakotas. I lived in Maine for a while, up in Mount Desert Island, mysterious place. Yeah, I knew, crossed paths with Ted Rockefeller, Peter in college. Dated Ann Mitchell, J.P. Morgan's granddaughter, for a while. I'm sure she doesn't like that mentioned, but I went out with Magna Wen quite a bit. Um, and was given like misleading indications that a girl who was returning the love I had poured into King Crimson and Peter Gabriel was returning the love was just a setup, but she was beautiful. Of course, that's what they were arguing with. Beauty is only skin deep. Well, with them, it obviously is. I mean, you go even get below the skin and listen to their beautiful music, and they're psychotics, criminally deranged, evil maniacs. I mean, beauty goes, it's certainly not music deep. But whatever. This is. Situation for me goes back to the days of Woodstock, when there were peace marches and stuff, and I was just a child. Very difficult for me to understand all of the things that were going on. And one of the things that's very difficult for me to accept about our society is the inability of police to function normally when it comes to a witness to crimes, organized crimes. I was arrested for bringing evidence of murder to the police. You wouldn't think that they would do that. I was arrested for armed robbery when I got home from the Pennsylvania Governor's School. You wouldn't think that they would do something this odd. I studied police ethics, corrections, law, criminal law, criminology, law enforcement, police operations. I got A's in all of these classes. I got honors credit for one of them. And wouldn't dare try to talk to police about anything. I mean, it's just, it puts them on edge. Oh my God, somebody's trying to communicate with us. No, mustn't. And of course, the people in the shop go crazy when you talk to the police. They're like, so you can't get anyone to think clearly about what is obviously evidence that the Axis was behind the AIDS attack. Yoko Ono was uploaded into our society by the Kennedy assassins for the purpose of the Axis restoration through the back door of America. That's what the business about Reagan laying a wreath at Big Bird Belson Cemetery was about. I mean, I'm sorry if you don't like hearing it, but that's the truth. And our society used to have human rights values when we came out of World War II. FDR wanted the French out of Indochina. He was skeptical of domino theory. He thought Stalin just wanted to contain barbarism so that he didn't lose 200 million people again. And I've never really thought that the Korean War, the Vietnamese War, had any purpose. These were victims of the Axis. The French were allies of the Japanese in Vietnam. So obviously, the death of FDR was premature because we ended up with the Truman Doctrine and too much power in the hands of Douglas MacArthur and ultimately General Westmoreland, and the covert attempt by Ronald Reagan to bring about a martial law in our society, which is what this script, the Texas School Book by King Crimson's Little Nicola, is intended to bring about. And the traders in Pennsylvania who were responsible for it turned out great enthusiasm for Donald Trump. And he may hold on to the presidency because of that situation in Pittsburgh, where the root issue is the arrest of John Schulman for rare book theft, which made the headlines of the Smithsonian. He was the source for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about me when they pulled this stuff. And they endorsed Donald Trump. He was the source for Penis Gabriel and a partner of Penis Gabriel, and terrible things that they pulled. Things that were so criminal, my mind was shattered, and I went into homelessness. I haven't had contact with this beautiful, beautiful girl to whom I owe my success in college because I had to leave because of John Schulman. The mayor has apologized to me. Mr. Peduto is a wonderful person. But what I have to say is too much for him. It would take someone who really cared about the United States of America to sort out what happened. Barack Obama doesn't care. He's with the chop spreading, pins and needles. He's like one of these voodoo professors. Blacks suffered from AIDS, therefore you should be poisoned in the mouth type of thinking. His voodoo wife gets a voodoo doll of the white and starts sticking needles and pins in it. We must have satisfied for our troops in Afghanistan. This white sect must pay weird penalties. Don't touch this savvy Jeff and Penny of the queers, of the abnormalists. Clinton was funded by Jeff and too. Hillary was to blame for so much of this. It's ridiculous. She had an agent on Mount Desert Island when they were running the program. So, it was put together by King Crimson's overly precious Jewish community, and how Fripp is. He's this overly precious posture, And they teamed up with Schulman. Fripp and Schulman pulled this whole thing, making me a joke, a model for who to laugh at, So I get out to Seattle and just sit in the bleachers watching Ichiro, The medical community did more to ruin my life. I've never had a life. But I've had some good experiences with the people of the world who matter to me. Courtney wrote me a very touching letter when Circe. Why would anybody want to hurt Circe? I don't understand.